Hello, anybody watching this live? I have been on hiatus because I've been a nomad. Me and my family, we have been nomading around for several weeks now. So some weeks work for the live, most weeks haven't. So here we are, and I'm hoping, maybe, cross my fingers, we're heading back to some normalcy again in terms of being able to do these lives. Welcome to this incredibly beautiful and sophisticated discussion panel that we have here today. And we have them here because we're kicking off a new series, and the series is all about generational differences. And so, again, I'm a big believer that the more we actually talk and the more we actually talk about our differences, the interesting reaction is we actually find out how much more we have in common, or we at least gain a great deal of understanding about one another so that we're not so judgmental, right? We can be less judgmental and more understanding if we actually talk about things. So this series is all about generational differences, and this very first episode is called the buffet job mentality. So that's what we're discussing today. I'm going to do a quick introduction of everybody here, and we're got kind of a nice spread. Not that I want to give away too many people's ages here, age anyone, because we clearly all don't look a day over 22. But, you know, even though we're hiding it very well, there is a nice spread here, ranging kind of anywhere from the top end, the upper echelon of the Gen Xers, through to the, lower echelon of the Gen Xers. And then we've got the millennial group as well, which, by the way, what a horrible description, geriatric millennials, which is a thing I recently heard and I just laughed at. And then kind of the midpoint in millennials, and then a little bit on the younger end of the millennials as well. I will preface this to say, this is going to be actually an intentional discussion about generalization, which, of course, I think typically we try not to live in that world. We try not to buy into stereotypes. We try not to buy into generalizations, but it's also, I think, a reality of how, we're learning, how we're evolving, what are the differences, what are some good things or bad things, or really are they good or bad, or are they just differences, and trying to gain some understanding. So this will actually be a very intentional conversation about generalizations. And I'm going to challenge our lovely group here to do that for us in the conversation. So again here, additional introductions here is these are all awesome team members and friends of mine that are here on the panel. We've got Berna, and we've also got Kristen. I don't know, Berna, have you been on a live with us before? I feel like you did once. No? Okay, so this is Berna. Oh, this is Berna's first time. So Berna's here, and we've got Kristen, of course, who you've seen a number of times on these lives and also on my YouTube channel. Hannah, same situation. She's been here before. Also, Courtney has been here before. And then Maureen, this is the first time you're on, right? For a discussion panel. So we got some newbies, and we've got some, old vets at this situation. So just want to do that quick introduction for everyone to give a little context to our topic today about the buffet job mentality. What I'm basically referring to is the idea of, you apply for a job, you get offered a job, you interviewed for it more than likely, you got a job description, it's covering a great deal probably on that job description, but probably not anything. I mean, I know when we put job descriptions together, we go, and more at the bottom, we cover as much as we possibly can in the job description. So you take this job and you come into it, and the concept of and the mentality of a buffet job mentality is you take this job and then having a perspective that you get to kind of choose. Like when you go up to a buffet, you go, I like this, I'll take a little of this, I like this a lot, let me take more of that, don't like that, I'm skipping it, and you go through the buffet and you kind of pick and choose between what you want. So that's the buffet job mentality definition as I've attempted to coin it here. And so what we're going to do is kind of talk about is that something that your generation you feel has subscribed to? Is it not? Is it something that is actually to the point of almost, hey, if there's one generation that does agree to, and subscribes to this mentality, is there another generation that kind of is maybe a little mad or irritated that there is this perspective on it? And if so, why? So we're just going to kind of talk it through and see where, again, generationally speaking, we think people are sitting when it comes to this overall mentality. So I'll put it out to the group, and I'm going to just kind of function to a great degree as a facilitator here, but I'm going to put it out to the group and just kind of see where our conversation leads. So who would like to kick it off and kind of share their view?
I'll start.
Okay.
As a geriatric millennial, means, born in the early 80s, basically, I've seen it both ways, right? I grew up in a time where certainly you don't get to choose your work tasks. You come in, it's whatever's on the docket for that day. You don't complain about anything. You just check it off your to-dos and dones. And that can be everything from helping someone at a copier to doing something that's actually probably a little bit more interesting. But you do it all because that's what's expected of you versus coming in and like, I wonder how my day's going to go. I'm going to pick the things I want to do today, right? So I've seen it kind of honored both ways in the workplace. And I've seen it lean sometimes more towards the picking our tasks a bit more as time's gone by versus I remember going in at my first job at 15 or 16 and it was like, here's what you're going to do. You're going to file 4,500 of these TPS reports. And when that's done, you get to do this, you get to do that. Like there was no decision of my own to make, right? And so I didn't get to choose. I had to do whatever was required of my job.
Was there any like negative reaction or maybe even like a level of resentment for the lack of autonomy to decide what you wanted to do or what you thought your job should be, or was it not even a thought?
It wasn't a thought. I was glad to have a job.
Okay.
That was my mentality at that age. Like I'm one of the few friends that had a job that I had a good paying wage in. My dad told me basically like go in and do whatever they ask you to do and get it done and don't complain. That was his attitude.
Do you feel that you were the norm for people that you saw that were your age?
Mostly.
Okay.
I'd say most. Yeah.
Okay. So you feel as a representative of the geriatric population of millennials that you feel like you're a good example of what most people were?
And talking to my peer group, people that were in my same age group, absolutely. Like
okay.
We all kind of were on the cusp of that, and we kind of knew that we had to do what we were asked to do.
Okay. What else? Who else we got some thoughts on it?
I have some thoughts. So as I want to kind of piggyback off of what Angela said in the beginning about, this isn't like a goal to stereotype. We don't want to do that. And I think that as time goes on, people are recognizing that the need to do less and less of that. That being said, as a business owner, I find it like very much a necessity to always be observing and learning about people so that we can truly just understand each other better. That's what this is about for me. That's what I love about this conversation. I will say, kind of when I think about the buffet job mentality, I will say that in my experience, I think I've seen my father and my mom's generation and their friends, their peers, more likely to have the mentality that Hannah was describing. You go to work, you're grateful to have a job, you're thankful for it, and you do what's asked of you, and you don't really have any issue, with it. I've definitely seen a mix of it in my own generation. I'm a Gen Xer, and I've seen a mix of it, depending on the role, depending on the company that you work for too. A lot of times, startup companies, people just kind of go into those type of small startup businesses knowing from the gate, I'm going to be wearing all kinds of hats here, and I'm going to be doing whatever's needed to take the business to the next level. And then if you're working for like a larger corporation, a lot of people tend to have that not buffet mentality as much as a that's not in my job description, very, very aware of what the job description
That's a good call out. That's not my job reaction to things, which is actually a big distinction that I've heard people who are very close to me that are baby boomers have said before. That was an issue that they took up with Gen Xers when they were kind of like coming up in the business world and in professional jobs, was like, what's up with these Gen Xers and their that's not my job mentality. And so not necessarily to your point, Kristen, buffet, right? It wasn't like, hey, here's my job and I'm picking and choosing it. But it was more of just like, well, that's not in my job description, or that's not in my realm of responsibilities, so why am I expected to do it?
I feel like that generation, from my experience, I can't speak for everyone because everyone has different experiences, but from my experience, I think that the baby boomer generation raised the Gen X generation to have a voice. And that was, we all raise our children with certain values and goals based on what we felt was lacking in our own experience growing up. And then I feel like I look at the way my parents raised me versus the way I'm raising my kids, making sure they know that they have rights, making sure that they know that they have a voice, and you don't want them to take it to the extreme and not have a good work ethic because of that. So it's always a fine dance. But
it's a good call out. What else we got there from your experiences in your generation?
I would say, you want to keep going, Kristen?
Okay.
I would say coming from like a midpoint millennial, I kind of see both sides. I see the morph happening. So where Hannah is the top end, she's still kind of Gen Xer, their strong work ethic, we're not picking and choosing. It's the slow morph of like, hey, that's not a fun task to do. I don't want to do that one. So I'm going to do all my jobs, but I'm going to skip over that one. So being in the workforce and like I've seen both sides of things as I've worked. Like everybody, some people will do it all. Some people will, I don't want to do that. So I'm just not going to do that. But I think I've seen the slow morph just being in the middle of it.
To what Courtney's sharing, I want to share like a positive observation I've made about this, and something I've always given millennials a lot of credit for is I've actually seen it as like not such a great thing that most Gen Xers were like workaholics. We to the point that we'll give up our health, we'll give up time with our family, we'll give up the things in life that we're passionate about and interested in because our whole identity is like wrapped up in working, or alternatively, if we weren't working, it was 100% wrapped up in just parenting, and so I feel like Gen Xers were kind of like guilty of like not taking a more holistic approach to life and like kind of like taking it all in and like looking in terms of quality of life. And I feel like what I've observed with millennials is like a better job at like more of that holistic approach, like having a better balance in terms of what's important to them and like not giving everything over to their job, and really finding value in a lot of different aspects of their life. So where I think it's interesting, where you're saying, Court, you're kind of at that midpoint, is you can see the importance of like having a great work ethic and saying, this is the job I signed up for and I have a responsibility for it. But then you can also see the importance of having balance there at the same time, So that's like, I think for me, a positive takeaway I've seen. I tend to be very pro millennial, so I'm very biased in that regard, but I think it just depends on it. So what about Berna, Maureen, what are your thoughts?
I feel like I have also sort of transitioned from being a young millennial and, coming from my early 20s to now. I feel like, being in the surroundings that I've been in, I feel like I've also learned that, at first, it was more like grab whatever you're given and, just work on it. And then it's okay to work on a couple of jobs that you're not probably, that's not your dream job, but it's okay to kind of like climb up to that level. And then, but I feel like now with social media and a lot of kids that are, they're a lot aware now. And I feel like that has just led them to, the whole work-life balance and realizing that, if you're working hard to work, you're actually doing that to spend time with your family and, it's for the better of your family. So I feel like the awareness is definitely there and, it has transitioned over the years. So,
Mary, a question I have for you, because this is something I've genuinely tried to strive to understand. One of the kind of, catchphrase type of sayings that have been out there for a handful of years now, and it was really like a millennial driven phrase, is the grind, like being on the grind. And as a Gen Xer, when I would hear being on the grind, that like really equated to like this hardcore focus on working hard, putting in a lot of time and hours and making money as a result of that time. And so when I would have, team members come on board and say, I'm in the grind, it's like, that was like what they said they were doing. In my mind, I'm like, oh, dang, all right, they're looking to work hard. They're looking to spend a lot of hours. Like, like that's in my mind what that was. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh no, that's not what they meant. Like, and as a matter of fact, when push came to shove in regards to time, like we had a couple of folks who joined the team that had another job. So they would put in like 20, 25 hours into this other job, and then they joined us, and we would tell them, yeah, it's a work from home, it's a make your own schedule, but rest assured, you're working 35 hours a week, and every minute of that time, you're working. So you get ready to grind, we're grinding here every day. We have a cheese grater, like nonstop, So when they would come back, maybe, and Courtney and Kristen, they know exactly what I'm talking about here. When they would come back, maybe 3 weeks later, and they experienced like what the grind meant in our environment, they were like, oh yeah, this is too much. This is taking up more time than I thought. This is more intense than I thought it was going to be. So the long question I have for you, Maureen, is like, what do you think is the millennials' definition of the grind? Like, help me understand what you believe the average, and Courtney, you could probably speak to this too, like what does a millennial mean by being in the grind?
I feel like in my experience it's more of like you said, working extra hours and given whatever you're taking whatever you're given, because I feel like growing up when I was in college, I was surrounded by a lot of students who were doing different jobs along with being students, and some of them were even supporting their families, and then later on after they graduated they got even better jobs, and it's obviously all that hard work that does pay off. So I feel like there are like a lot of kids that I even know now who are doing as much work as they can along with balancing their student life. So like the grind is definitely just working hard, and I feel like me growing up, it was embedded in me that you're just after graduation just take whatever job there is that you're given, and you have to like work hard at it, and slowly and gradually make your point towards whatever you aspire to have in the end. So
okay.
Yeah.
So it sounds like your definition of the grind is the same one that I have. Like, Courtney, do you feel the same way? Or Hannah, do you feel like
I would agree with Maureen. My definition of the grind would be just putting your full self into whatever you're doing at that time and doing it all.
Mm-hmm.
I would concur with that. Like,
Yeah.
I think, the thing for me where I sit here, the grind is like where you've worked. There's some days, some places you work, we've all had jobs, not here, but other places we work. And I think generationally, everyone can speak to, there's places you've worked where it's like, wow, you really felt like you worked every day. And I think that to me attributes to the grind. When I work that hard, where I know exactly all that I did all day long, and I'm exhausted mentally at the end of the day, I know I've given it everything.
Yeah, I don't know. I still feel like we haven't solved this mystery, right? So that's something I'm going to continue to, like, as we go through this series, I'm going to continue to kind of dig into a little bit more, because I think that was one of those phrases. Like, there was another phrase I recently thought I understood the definition and I was way off. So I want to make sure, one, I have the right definition of like phrases, and then two, like, understand that. So, because clearly the folks that we had, kind of working with the team and then said that they were in the grind and then came back later and said, oh, wow, this is like too intense for me, and this is like more hours than I wanted to put in. Clearly we had a different definition.
I think the disconnect is the grind to them means they are willing to work multiple jobs. They are willing to work long hours. They're not used to working as intense as we do.
Okay, interesting. Maybe. That's a good call up. What about you, Berna?
Well, that's kind of off of Hannah when she said, when you get off work, you feel tired. I don't think they want to do that. You want to have energy for the rest of your life, for the rest of, your evening and your weekends and stuff like that. Sorry.
What about you, Berna? I'm really curious to get your perspective on this whole buffet job mentality, not only from being a fabulous Gen Xer like ourselves here, but also in addition to that, like, you've got one of your kids is already like a millennial, right? Like a young millennial, and then your other two, I think, would be like the Gen Z, Zillennial generation. So, like, what have you observed?
Dozens, yep. All right, so it's been a while since I've actually been in-house working. But even back then, you know, that was really, like, you had your job laid out, you had to get it done, and it was done. And, you know, you would stay longer just to get things done. Mm-hmm. You know, it wasn't a question asked, you just wanted to make sure that was all done. So now with my kids, I see how they do the pick and choose, but I mean, they're pretty, you know, I might have easy kids. My kids are just like, you know, they get the job, they do it, and they, you know, but their mentality is totally, it is different. They're like, I don't know if I want to do this anymore. It's like, okay, I'll quit. And that's it. I go, you're not going to quit your 2 weeks? No, I don't know. But
so you have then observed that you would say with kind of this early 20s group you've seen, and because I'm sure it's not just like your kids, I'm sure that this is a mentality that in general with that their group of friends, you know, I mean, obviously people are influenced by the community that they're in and by the folks that they hang out with. So like, it's, you know, having kind of like, they have a strong sense of, hey, this is what I want, this is what I don't want, right? And then that's very much influencing what they do or don't want to do. I mean, you, Berna, for you, especially because you're kind of like on the little bit upper echelon of the Gen Xers, like what for your perspective is the reaction by like a Gen Xer generation to that more buffet mentality? Like, what you feel like there's like irritation or even like resentment sometimes that can come in the workforce from that mentality?
Yeah, I believe so. You know, everybody has, you know, the way they come into it is how they'll perceive it. You know, there's a lot of people that are expecting a lot, but to do little. Or I guess that's what I'm gonna say. So, you know, they come in, they see it, and they're like, oh no, this is not for me.
Right.
You know, they like do a quick turn.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a really good call out. One of the things that, as I was kind of processing this buffet mentality and I was thinking about the baby boomer generation specifically was, I've had a lot of conversations with like, you know, the baby boomer generation, people who are very close to me, and they'll speak like really openly and honestly with me. And there is like a pretty significant degree of resentment, you know, towards I would say millennial generation and younger, because of not only the, you know, that's not my job, I'm not going to do it, all kind of like the bare minimum kind of doing mentality, but let alone the buffet mentality. And, you know, and part of what I was like, gosh, why, like, are they getting the job done? I guess that's always what it comes down to for me. I'm like, is the job getting done or not? Like, if you do it smarter, if you find a way to get something that gets done and normally by average person in 5 hours, but you're smart enough and you have tools and resources and technology to get it done in 2, like, why not get it done? You know, and I've literally brought this point up with my dad. Like, we talk about everything and we talk about these kind of topics a lot. And he's like, well, from my perspective, if they get it done in 2, then they should be coming back and asking for 3 more hours of work. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird because you're almost forming like a punishment system. Like, I don't know if, you know, is that really encouraging someone where you're like, oh, great job, you got it done in 2. Like, here's like more, you know, more work, even though you've been successful in completing the task, you know? So we talk about that and again, that resentment. And what I discovered is there's actually, generationally speaking, a huge degree of hierarchy mentality that's still very much ingrained into the baby boomer generation. This belief of like, you know, levels, and, you know, when you're in a job and somebody's older and somebody's younger, that with that comes along, like, you get to a point where you earn your way to be above certain things, and you don't have the right when you're younger and you're just getting started to like say, no, I don't want to do that. Right? It's, you shouldn't have a choice. And it really comes down to, I didn't have a choice. Why do you have a choice? Right? And so as I kind of probed into that and would talk more and more to like, you know, with the baby boomers, it was, you know, really a discovery that a lot of that negativity, a lot of that resentment just kind of came from this place of like, equating it to respect, equating it to a work ethic, equating it to a lot of like things that they went, I never had a choice, why do you? You know, and it kind of came back to that quite a bit. And also, like, I think, like, a desire for affirmation to say, like, hey, what we did was great, so don't change it. If you change it, that must mean that you're insulting what we were doing. Like, change is almost like an insult. So I think that, like, when you go from, I mean, that's a pretty significant extreme, right? Like, if you go from that baby boomer mentality down to, like, the Gen Zers, that's a big gap when it comes to this, you know, this particular mentality around the buffet mentality. I guess the good news is that most of the baby boomers are heading towards retirement at this point. So by the time that the Gen Zers are really up and coming, we won't have too much tension, hopefully, when it comes to this particular topic. So I want to hop over, now that everybody shared a little bit perspective, and we're going to be wrapping up here shortly, just some of the comments. So we had one comment says, do you think that it has something to do with how well the economy was, and then how the economy affects a generational mindset? And I think that that's a great call out, because, like, my grandfather, so what, do you guys remember what the name of the generation was before baby boomers?
No, but I was just thinking, I wonder how much of a gap there was when the baby boomers were entering the workforce to the folks that you're getting ready.
It's called the quiet generation, I believe, Angela.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So that generation was post Great Depression. Mm-hmm. So their childhood, like my grandfather's childhood, saw, like, still was in recovery from the Great Depression. And so when you talk about economy, like, you're talking about, you know, an entire country, let alone even the planet, that was suffering from, you know, people standing in lines for food, people who came from middle and even in some cases upper class families that were even well-to-do, to, like, nothing, and asking for government bread and cheese type of situation, you know, type of thing. So that, I would say for sure, that affected the work ethic. It affected, like, the take the job and be happy with the fact that you're getting any kind of paycheck, like, be appreciative. And then, of course, that being taught, and then the baby boomer generation seeing their parents go through that. And one of the things that my dad had called out was, he feels a lot of the baby boomers as parents didn't ever want their kids to, like, see or experience struggle, because most of them had experienced and seen that in their families. And so it was kind of the early onset of helicopter parenting. The Gen Xers, by the way, are the masters of helicopter parenting. No one can do it better. But it's, you know, and that, of course, is going to have a different impact on the millennials and so on and so forth. So it's, you know, I think that the economy piece is a really good call out. And also, Marianne had called out the impacts of technology, I think, is a huge part of it too. We had another comment was, I'm a Gen Xer and I definitely need better balance. So agreeing with our kind of workaholic mindset that the Gen Xers can definitely have. Oh, and I think it was the lost generation was the one before baby boomers.
The silent generation.
Okay.
What they were calling them prior to that, it was the greatest generation.
Oh.
Which was 1900 to 1927.
How'd they get that title? I think the Gen Xers were going to be called the complacent ones. Like, we just kind of like, whatever our parents say, that's fine. We're good. Yeah, whatever they said. So it's we'll kind of see. I think the millennials, honestly, and again, I recognize that I'm pretty biased, but I give a lot of credit to the millennials for, like, having a stronger sense of, like, what they believe in, and the desire to, like, make the world a better place, and, you know, get past a lot of these archaic thinkings around, you know, racism, and, you know, and just really wanting to make a difference in the world. I think in many ways the Gen Xers are going to get skipped over when it comes to government leadership. You see, like, the 60 plus something crowd that's in government leadership right now, and then all of a sudden you've got, like, people that are, like, in their 30s and younger that are in government. So it's like, whoa, what happened to, like, the 40s and 50s crowd? And we've just kind of, like, we're like, nah, you know, hopefully those people make a good difference, you know. So it's it'll be interesting to see what the Gen Xer name is. I don't think we're going to get the greatest generation to number 2. I don't think we're going to be earning that one, so we'll have to see. But thank you guys so much for your perspective. I hope everybody learned a little something today. I hope, if nothing else, if you didn't learn anything, maybe it's going to kind of trigger thought processes, yourself about like what does it mean? Who am I? And just starting to really question that. And then hopefully that'll trigger other conversations in your life. Like maybe now you'll find yourself engaging in the same topic and starting to understand generations within your own family, within your own friends, and start to kind of gain a better understanding with one another. I will release the next topic, next week to the next discussion panel that's up that we'll be talking about our next topic. But thank you again, everybody, so much. As we wrap up here, I want to remind everyone, if you do not follow my YouTube channel, it's Mom Mogul of 4. So please go to YouTube and go ahead, subscribe, hit that reminder bell as well, or notifications bell. Also, make sure you check out all of our different social media channels for AIS, and also all the different, great things that are coming out in terms of just all of the social that we're doing and a lot of different other aspects. So thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day and week.